I'm a single mom to my brilliant 16-year-old daughter Madison, who's been working her butt off to get into her dream college with a full scholarship. And we live in one of those suburban neighborhoods where everyone knows everyone's business. Which usually isn't a problem until you meet someone like Veronica Hartwell. Veronica is the self-appointed queen bee of our local parent Facebook groups, PTA meetings, and basically anything involving kids in our district. And she has this insufferable habit of treating every interaction like a competition where her precious son Bryce absolutely must come out on top. Now Bryce is a decent enough kid, don't get me wrong. But Veronica has spent his entire life bulldozing obstacles out of his path and making excuses for his mediocrity while somehow convincing herself and trying to convince others that he's God's gift to academia. The problem started when both Madison and Bryce applied for the same highly competitive summer internship at our local research hospital, something that would look incredible on college applications and potentially lead to scholarship opportunities. Madison had been preparing for months, volunteering at the hospital, maintaining a 4.2 GPA, and she'd even started an after-school tutoring program for younger kids interested in STEM fields. When the internship coordinator, Dr. Sarah Chun, called to let me know Madison had been selected, I was over the moon. But I made the mistake of mentioning it casually to another parent at soccer practice, not knowing that Veronica was lurking nearby like a hawk. Within hours, Veronica had somehow gotten Dr. Chun's direct number and was calling the hospital, claiming there had been some kind of mistake because her son was clearly more qualified, and demanding to see Madison's application materials. Dr. Chun, being the professional she is, politely explained that the selection process was confidential and final, but Veronica wasn't having it. She started showing up at the hospital unannounced, cornering staff members in hallways, and even tried to schedule a meeting with the hospital administrator to lodge a formal complaint about the unfair selection process. But here's where things get really ugly. Veronica somehow found out that Madison had been working a part-time job at a local cafe to help with our household expenses, and she decided to weaponize this information in the most disgusting way possible. She started a whisper campaign throughout our parent network, suggesting that Madison was too distracted by work to focus on her studies, and implying that she only got the internship because the hospital felt sorry for her situation. She went even further, spreading rumors that I was somehow gaming the system by playing up our financial struggles to gain sympathy. And she had the audacity to suggest that families like ours were taking opportunities away from more deserving candidates. The final straw came when I discovered that Veronica had actually contacted Madison's school counselor, Ms. Rodriguez, and tried to convince her to write a letter to the hospital questioning Madison's character and work ethic. Ms. Rodriguez, thankfully, saw right through Veronica's manipulation and immediately called me to give me a heads up. But the fact that this woman had gone so far as to try to sabotage my daughter's reputation at school made my blood boil. That night, I sat down at my computer and decided it was time for some good old-fashioned research. Because if Veronica wanted to play dirty, I was going to make sure I had all the facts on my side. What I discovered over the next few days of digging through public records, social media posts, and conversations with other parents was a pattern of behavior that went back years. Veronica had pulled similar stunts when Bryce didn't make varsity baseball as a sophomore, claiming that the coach was biased against him and demanding that other players be removed from the team. She'd harass teachers who gave Bryce anything less than an A, going so far as to claim that one math teacher was discriminating against him because of his learning style. She'd even gotten into a screaming match with another parent at a debate tournament when Bryce didn't place in the top 3, accusing the judges of having predetermined winners. But the real goldmine came when I started talking to parents whose kids had graduated a few years ahead of our kids, because apparently Veronica's helicopter parenting had been causing problems for nearly a decade. I learned about the time she hired a private investigator to look into the background of a teacher who had given Bryce a C+ on a project. The time she tried to get another family's son suspended because he'd beaten Bryce in a science fair. And the time she'd actually contacted college admissions offices to try to get other students' applications rejected. Armed with this information, I decided it was time to stop playing defense and go on the offensive. but I wanted to make sure my approach was both legal and absolutely devastating. I started by documenting everything Veronica had done regarding Madison's internship, taking screenshots of her Facebook posts, recording phone calls where legally permitted, and gathering witness statements from other parents who had been subjected to her harassment. Then I created a comprehensive timeline of her behavior patterns, showing how she'd consistently used intimidation and manipulation to try to clear a path for Bryce at the expense of other children's opportunities and mental health. My masterstroke came when I realized that Veronica worked as a client relations manager for a prestigious law firm in our city, a firm that prided itself on its ethical standards and community involvement. I did some research into the firm's partnerships and discovered that they had a major contract with our local hospital system, the same system where Madison had gotten her internship. I also found out that the firm had recently launched a scholarship program for underprivileged students pursuing careers in healthcare, which made Veronica's behavior even more ironic. I crafted a carefully worded email to the firm's managing partner, explaining that one of their employees had been engaging in harassment and intimidation tactics against local students and families, and I included a detailed timeline of Veronica's actions along with supporting documentation. I made sure to emphasize how her behavior reflected poorly on the firm's stated values and how it could potentially impact their relationships with community partners, especially given their scholarship program's mission. I sent copies of this email to the hospital's administration, our school district's superintendent, and the local newspaper's education reporter, making sure that everyone who needed to know about Veronica's pattern of behavior had the full picture. The response was swift and absolutely beautiful to watch unfold. The law firm launched an immediate investigation into Veronica's conduct, and within a week she was placed on administrative leave pending a review of her employment status. The hospital administration sent a formal letter to all families in our district, clarifying that their internship selection process was fair and transparent, and they included a subtle but pointed statement about not tolerating harassment of their staff or program participants. The school district opened their own investigation into Veronica's inappropriate contact with school personnel, and they ended up implementing new policies about how parents could raise concerns about their children's education. But the real justice came when the local newspaper decided to run a feature story about parent harassment in academic settings, using Veronica's behavior as a case study without naming her directly but with enough details that everyone in our community knew exactly who they were talking about. The article quoted several families who had been affected by this type of harassment, and it sparked a community-wide conversation about the toxic culture of competitive parenting and how it was harming our kids. Veronica ended up losing her job, not just because of the harassment, but because the investigation uncovered that she'd been using company resources to research other families, and had even tried to use the firm's letterhead to intimidate school officials in previous incidents. Her husband, who had apparently been unaware of the extent of her behavior, filed for divorce after learning about her pattern of harassment and the financial liability it had created for their family. Bryce, poor kid, ended up transferring to a different school district to escape the fallout, but honestly, getting away from his mother's toxic influence was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. The final update I got was that Veronica had to pay legal fees for several families she'd harassed over the years, as they decided to pursue civil action once her pattern of behavior became public knowledge. Madison, meanwhile, absolutely thrived. In her internship, impressed everyone with her work ethic and intelligence, and ended up getting not just one but 3 full scholarship offers to top-tier universities. She starts at Johns Hopkins in the fall, and Dr. Chun has already connected her with research opportunities that will set her up for success in medical school. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's simply letting someone's own toxic behavior catch up with them while you focus on building something better for yourself and your family.